What should you be reading next? Finding your next book. Is this book something that I should be reading next? If these are confusions that you're having while starting your reading journey, today's video is going to be super useful for you. Let's get started. Hey folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Praveen Ramesh, and on this channel we speak about non-fiction books, a summarized review. I speak about lessons that I'm personally learning from these books. I find it immensely useful. I hope you do too. Today is not about a book review, rather it's about finding your next book, right? So before I go into how do you find your next book or how do I find my next book, I just want to give a big shout out to the likes of Ali Abdal, Alex and Books, from whom a large part of today's video is going to be inspired, because I've seen their social media channels, their videos to pick up some of the books that I wanted to read, and today's just want to give a shout out to them before I get started with today's video. Okay, anyway, so here is how we're going around the framework. I'll talk about each framework of how do you find your next book, and I'm going to give you a small activity. So pick up pen and paper, because as we are going through these activities, the ideal scenario would be to have at least 3 or 4 book recommendations at the end of this video. I'll give you that activity. Probably you could do it at your own time, or if you want, you can just do it now, pause the video, do it, and then continue watching it. Whatever works for you, but the important thing is to get started with your reading journey. Let's get started with the first framework. It's called the cure framework, right? So what is a cure? So just take a step back and think about, hey, what are the problems that I'm currently having in my life, which could be a personal life or it could be a professional life. Let's take my example, right? So on a personal level, I want to be a slightly more mindful person, which is I want to have as much less digital time as possible. I want to cut down on the number of distractions I have in my day. I want to ensure that I meditate a lot more frequently or a lot more regularly, and these are going to help me propel me into a more mindful version of myself. This is the cure that I'm seeking in my current personal life, right? So what have I done? So I've just gone ahead and brought at least 3 or 4 bestsellers in this category, right? For example, I've got Digital Minimalism, which is which speaks by Cal Newport, which speaks broadly about how do you cut down your digital addiction. Right? I've got this book called Things You Notice When You Slow Down. Again, speaks about the importance of you slowing down in your life to notice things around you and how you need to befriend your emotions and things like that. I got this book called Ikigai, which speaks about a healthier way of living and in which mindfulness is also a part. Right? So as you would see, I just identified one portion of my life where I need some amount of cure or some amount of solvability that's needed, and I've gone ahead and got books from those. So here's an activity for you. Just sit back and think, hey, what are the 1 or 2 things that I personally need cure from, right? It could be in your personal life, like it could be being mindful, it could be having better relationships, it could be, conversing better or things like that. Or it could be in your professional life where you want to learn, go deep into your area of work, or you want to have a better relationship with your peers, or you want to manage team better, whatever that is. So note down one cure that you want to find in your personal life, one cure in your professional life. I hope you have done that. Now go find the bestsellers in these categories. A simple Google search or a simple YouTube search is going to give you at least 2 or 3 book recommendations for each of your personal problems or cures that you are seeking. So that's the first framework. Second one, let's go to curiosity, right? So curiosity, here is how I think about curiosity, right? So perpetually you're always interested about something and you're far more likely to read about that more. Right? So here is how, in my personal example, I was very interested in psychology primarily because of one reason, right? So it's always fun to learn why people react the way they do, and it's always fun to learn how people take a lot of their decisions, right? So I personally got interested in psychology and decision making because, again, one of my friends, he's a sports psychologist, and I got, one of those conversations with him, I got very intrigued about the subject. So broadly, psychology and decision making were things that I got interested in, and I ended up reading at least 3 or 4 books in that. For example, I got this book called Thinking in Bets, which by Annie Duke, which speaks around a lot of frameworks around decision making. I got this book called Maybe You Should Speak to Someone, which speaks about the life of a therapist and how she goes through things as she is giving therapy to a lot of her patients. So it was a lot of fun read. So I ended up reading at least 3 or 4 books around decision making and psychology. Right? So I got this book called Cashvertising, which speak about the psychology of copywriting. Activity time again. So sit back and think about things that you are curious about, right? And how do you find what are you curious about? Think about subjects that you really liked at school or college. Think about, either podcasts or TED Talks that you're seeing that, kind of kindle your curiosity. I hope you have noted down at least 1 or 2 things that you're curious about. Now go find the bestsellers in them. So you're more likely to end up reading more about them than things that you like to read, right? Because there is so much recommendations around in YouTube, Instagram, wherever you go, that you want to read something, whereas you really need to read something, right? So you're more probably like to read something when you're very curious about it. So that's the underlying principle of this. So that's the second framework called the curiosity. Let's go to the third one, which is called the double down strategy, as I call it. So double down strategy is pretty simple, right? Let's say from cure and curiosity, you found one book each that you've really enjoyed. So now go double down on the authors who have written more similar books. In my case, I fumbled upon, let's say, Adam Grant, who wrote Think Again, a book review coming up real soon. So when I read Think Again, I liked the book so much that I ended up buying 2 or 3 more books from Adam Grant. Similarly, I got this book called Steal Like an Artist from Aston Kleon, and I ended up buying 2 more books from him. There are many other authors, for example, Ryan Holiday, right, who writes about stoicism and things like that. So you're more likely to enjoy books from authors whom you have enjoyed reading in the past. So no, just sit back and relax. Even if you have completed one book, fiction or non-fiction, think about or go find more books from the same author, and I assure you that you're going far more likely to fall in love with what the author has to say. The fourth one, footnotes and references. Right, so footnotes and references is a pretty straightforward one, because I predominantly read a lot of non-fiction books. Most of these books are backed by thorough research. Most of these books are backed by thorough, let's say, investigation and things like that. Right, so what do? As I'm reading these books, either on Kindle or physical books, I make it a point to note down every single book that author has said in that book, right? So I make a note of the articles that the author has said. I make a note of all the books that the author has said. Quickly after I finish a book, take like around 30-40 minutes to browse through the acknowledgements and references and things like that, and you're far more likely to find at least 5 or 6 book recommendations just by doing this. For example, I was reading Atomic Habits, and I found this book called Tiny Habits, The Power of Habit, and things like that as a supplementary to this. So this approach of going through references and footnotes is going to help you double down on subjects that you really like. Let's say if you're someone who wants to be very nerdy or geek out about habits, if you read one book about habits, you're far more likely to find at least 3 or 4 books. And once you read, like, let's say around 7 to 8 books on a topic, you start to have a fair idea of what everyone has to say. Same with decision making, same with productivity and things like that. So go through footnotes of the books that you're currently reading, and I'm pretty sure you'll find at least 3 or 4 books that will help you deepen your knowledge in that current subject. And fifth and final one is Goodreads and channels and pages, right? So as I said at the start, I personally follow Ali Abdal, Alex and Books and things like that, and I follow a couple of other for fictions as well. Just by following a couple of people on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, my feed is always, every time I refresh, I at least find 1 or 2 new book recommendations from these people. So here is an activity for you. Go follow at least 1 or 2 people who do book recommendations, and if you're watching this, do like, share and subscribe this channel as well, because I keep posting about book recommendations as well. So yeah, go follow at least 1 or 2 people who will give you book recommendations. That way you're never going to run out of recommendations for books, right? So just to quickly kind of summarize this whole thing, find problems that you're currently facing in your personal or professional life, find books for them. Curiosity, as a kid or as an adult, what are the things that you're curious about? State those 1 or 2 things and find the bestsellers there, right? The third one, double down strategy. Think about the books that you've really enjoyed and now find more books by the same author. I've done that for Seth Godin, I've done that for Ryan Holiday, I've done that for someone like Adam Grant. I'm pretty sure you will have at least 10 or 15 book recommendations by doing that. And the fourth one, go through footnotes and references, right? So take out the current book that you're reading. If it's a non-fiction, all the more better. Just take a note of all the reference books that the author has mentioned. Fifth and the final one, use algorithm to your advantage. Follow at least 1 or 2 people who make book recommendations, and I'm pretty sure by following these 4, you're always going to be brimmed with a lot of book recommendations. Now on to you. Did you kind of think about at least the next book that you want to read? If yes, do let me know, what you're going to be reading next. If not, just drop me an email and I'll pick a random book for you based on your personality, and then let's see how that goes. Do let me know, and do subscribe to this channel. And this is Praveen Ramesh signing off.